All right. Hello, guys. Hopefully, we are live and good to go. I'm going to check on my laptop. I'm going to have comments on there. But let's go ahead to see if we're all good to go. Let me know down in the comments if everything looks right. If I sound right, let me know down in the comments. Or the chat, I guess. I think we should be good. All right, so hello, guys. We have Jesse saying best Targaryen king. The Maegor thing might have gone too far, and that he isn't as bad as the Maesters claim. That is a common theme that we are going to discuss in today's video. That Maegor, I believe, in many ways, was someone that was overly hated by the Maesters, and he was someone that did a lot of good for the kingdoms. I'm curious 10 years from now how Maegor is portrayed on TV. That's a great point, and that actually leads me to a video I recorded today with House of the Stag. We were talking about the Game of Thrones cinematic universe, and one of the ideas I thought that would be interesting for a show is he asked me on the video, because it was on his video, it wasn't like how I was, giving him questions and topics to answer. And he asked me what show would I want to see the most. And my first obvious answers were the first Blackfire Rebellion, Aegon's Conquest. And I kind of caught in a third one, which would be a cool one, would be Maegor, kind of following his life. So I think that would be interesting to see how they would do that on a show. You think they will do a Sons of the Dragon TV show? I think it's very possible, Jesse. That's true, Jesse. I mean, I think it's hard to look at the faith and look at them being likable, but the thing is, if we look at our own faith, right, religion, our own religion in today's world doesn't particularly like you marrying multiple people, or let's just say like Christianity type stuff like that, right? So it is interesting the way the faith is not liked a lot of times. Also, Matthew, that is a weird emote. Hi Matthew, how are you? Maegor the Based. Maegor versus Maekar, who is a better king? I would say Maekar would be better. I don't think Maegor was necessarily good as king. I think Maegor would be a very good hand of the king. I just don't think he was a good hand, or he was a good king. Aegon's Conquest is kind of boring to me. So this is actually a point I brought up with Aegon's Conquest, and the struggles of doing a show with that would be, when you look at what made House of the Dragon appealing and Game of Thrones to the general public, a lot of those things actually wouldn't be present in an Aegon the Conquest show. Aegon the Conquest is very straightforward, right? It's kind of like one side just steamrolls the country. It's a lot more about the importance of the dragons, representing that idea, and showing how the Targaryens took power. It's not like this idea where you have two factions and one faction is this, one faction the other, and they both are legit claims to the throne. It's not like that idea. Hi, Andrew. How are you? Also, Jesse, you're good. Hi, Ashley. There's a theory that the faith is real as the other religions, but it, for example, gives you strength when giving birth or in battle, so no one can really tell. That's an interesting idea, Ultra. And, I mean, here's the thing with faith as a whole, right? Faith can be used as a very interesting power, right? You can make a bunch of soldiers believe that they have the faith on their side, so they'll fight stronger because they think they are blessed by the faith. So, or by the warrior in this circumstance. So again, that is an interesting idea that is kind of brought up and is present all throughout Song of Ice and Fire. Let me get this up on my let me get chat up on my laptop, and we'll start going on Maegor. We're going to pick up not at the beginning of his life. This is basically a continuation. So, the first part, or the stream we did last week, which was on Wednesday, was talking mainly about Aenys. So we got a little bit of Maegor in that video as well, just comparing the two and kind of their come-ups. So again, I think if you guys are rewatching the stream back when it's a video, I think that's a good stream to watch before this one, because it straight up parallels into it. I think Joffrey killed Ned at Baelor was a blood sacrifice to the Seven. That could be seen like that. I will say the 7, it hasn't seen that we've seen a lot of blood power with the 7, but that could very well be happening. What do you think of the big Walder revelation? Yeah, so I read your theory. Let me pull it up so I can completely remember it. You commented that on my Stannis video, correct? Let me look on that, and then I will give you my exact thoughts, because I don't fully remember it. Okay, so. Where's your other comment, Ashley? Here we go. So, Big Walder's elevation makes him an X factor in Winterfell's liberation. It's my belief that he killed Little Walder, and the discovery of Little Walder's corpse set in motion a series of critically important events for the Northern conspirators. So I assume Big Walder is one of them. If true, and he's sharing command of the Frey forces in the field, it's possible he'll kill another cousin, Hostine, in the chaos to give himself full control and subsequently yield to Stannis' army. And this would allow his capture and presume questioning, which in turn allows him to pass a message from Wyman to Stannis. It could also allow for Stannis' men to disguise themselves as Freys and infiltrate Winterfell undetected. I think that makes a lot of sense. Also, was that playing my video? I don't know if you guys could hear that. You couldn't. Okay, good. But yeah, I think that's a great, interesting point, because the big point that we need to come about with Stannis taking Winterfell is there has to be some way that either he gets men into Winterfell to unlock the gates or whatever, or something like that has to happen. Also, happy birthday, Ghost T. I hope you have a fantastic day. Everybody give a happy birthday to him and all that. So, but Ashley, I think you have a great idea here, because with that being said, I've always thought, like, how do the Stannis Force get in? And I've thought maybe, well, you could have a lot of Stannis' forces dress up as Freys and have them be like the last like remnants of the Frey force, and then that force would then unlock, you know, the gates, and then they would attack then. But it could make sense with what you're stating, that we see the Freys, again, with that internal conflict of who is gaining power within the Freys, we see that as a common theme, could actually flip. Now, the real question there would be, okay, the North doesn't like the Freys as a whole, so how would they view this action? Does that fit what the Freys would do? It's an interesting idea, but I think you present a very interesting argument, Ashley. In my opinion, I would rather see Aegon's Conquest as a movie or a series of movies than a show. It would probably translate. Yeah, I kind of agree with that, Matthew. I think Aegon's Conquest is something better for probably a movie, or maybe like 2 movies. I don't know if you do 3 movies. I think maybe 2 movies would be pretty good for that. I've seen people speculate that he will survive the battle and become a hostage. If Stannis eventually he will be installed as Lord of the Twins. That's another interesting idea. So, Jim, what you actually are talking about is exactly what my answer was. So my answer was, I wanted to see the first Blackfire Rebellion, and I wanted it to be very similar to Season 1 of House of the Dragon. If something works, don't, you know, break it. Don't try to fix it. It's good, right? So the way I propose it is, you see Aegon the Fourth, and he's going through, and we're seeing him make all these mistakes, how he's legitimizing bastards, he gives Blackfire, and we see all these mistakes, and that leads us into Season 2, which would be the actual conflict. And you could build up all of our characters like a Bloodraven and all these other characters. I got that from, yeah. So by the way, I have seen his channel, Ashley. I just haven't watched a ton of it. And that, I think, is the interesting part, Jesse, where it's like there's not that back and forth, right, that we see with Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, that I don't think would go well for that. Grease, if you could be cast as a Game of Thrones character, who would you like to play? Well, first, I will say my acting's horrible. I wouldn't do well in any role, but if I had to just go off of like what I look like and make that make sense to a character, I don't even know, because there's not a ton of characters that I feel like have like really dark hair, but then I also fit like the build of. Maybe like a random Night's Watchman. I don't know. That's a tough question. Maybe I could be like a Baratheon bastard or something, because they kind of have that dark hair. I don't know. But they're all like really big and muscular, and I'm not. I'm only 5'9", so I don't really fit that. Um. Hi Casper, how are you? All right, so let's get into Maegor. All right, so Maegor, we're gonna pick up with him as he's claiming the throne, and that's kind of where we ended off in last video with last stream with Aenys dying. So the Faith rises in a rebellion against Aenys in 41 AC, and in that year Aenys dies. So, or I guess the next year he dies. And while this is happening, Visenya and Maegor, they're back, right? Well, Maegor is back, presumably. I can't speak. Visenya was with Aenys when he died. We talked about there's some speculation that could have been some foul play. I don't tend to believe it. But then she goes and gets Maegor. So the two are back in Westeros. And Maegor is like, you know what? I'm becoming king. Screw Aegon. I'm taking control. The kingdoms are a mess, and I am the person that's going to fix the problem. Now, if we look at why Maegor would do this, Aegon is this kid who hasn't really proved himself. He doesn't have a dragon he can ride. There's a lot of signs, I think, if you're looking at it from Maegor and Visenya's point of view, that this is going to be an Aenys 2.0. He just doesn't... And when you look at the way Aenys left the kingdoms, the Targaryen dynasty is very much in doubt, right? This is a very pivotal point for their dynasty. And I can really understand why Maegor takes the throne, especially with his mother whispering in her ear, and that's what she wanted. I don't necessarily blame Maegor for taking the throne, right? He has all of the claim to do it. He has the largest dragon. His mother has Vhagar. They, by all rights, have more love of the people than, you know, Aegon at this point. I don't really blame Maegor. I think he sees what's happening and says, I'm taking control. We're not having another Aenys. So I definitely understand why he does it. Now, with the actual line of succession, which again, I want to point out, it hadn't really been established that well yet. It was more like just the male heir came next. But in all real Westeros laws, Aegon Price should have been king. But looking at why Maegor does it, it's very understandable in my opinion. I'd be interested to see what your guys' thoughts are on that, because this is the moment where the Maesters go, Maegor usurped Aegon and all this stuff, and to a degree he did. But at the same time, I think it is for the better good and for the Targaryen dynasty. Valuable hostage, yes. Aegon did abandon the throne. Well, he wouldn't really abandon it. He was on a procession around the kingdoms, basically, and then he just kind of gets trapped. Oh god, Matthew, you need to chill. Wasn't Aegon at Craig Hall? I believe so. Let me see. Does it say where he was on my document here? All I know is he was out basically somewhere. He was basically trapped and all that. So he wasn't really in a position to be in control. If Maegor and Visenya knew about the prophecy of the others, they probably thought Maegor would be a better choice to protect the realm, so he needed to sit in the throne. Yeah, and I agree. Not even that part of it, right? Because I think that's something George added for the cinematic universe, basically, and something he added later on. I don't know if that was in his original vision. I'd highly doubt it. But I think it's more the idea that the Targaryen dynasty could very easily fall. The Faith is very powerful at this moment. And how do you deal with that? Do you deal with it? How is Aegon going to deal with it? He doesn't have a dragon that he can ride. He doesn't have a Vhagar. He does not have Balerion. Like, I just think logically, Maegor saw what was happening. And he took control. Now, some people could have said that, well, Maegor should have backed Aegon. But here's the problem that he saw. It's the same thing with Aenys. What would Aegon have done? Would Aegon have allowed Maegor to do what he needed to do to get rid of the Faith? And that I don't think would have happened. So again, I completely understand this point. This is not one of those points where I'm like, wow, Maegor is cruel. He usurped his half brother's son. Like, yeah, but Aegon had all the signs of being an awful, like maybe not awful, but being someone that couldn't handle this moment, and he didn't have the power to back it up either. PJ speculates that Aenys may have been Maegor, his heir. He had Blackfire and was Prince of Dragonstone. They were so. We talked about this a little bit in the last stream, and I personally don't think so. I think Aenys saw it as just simply Maegor was a better swordsman than Aenys by a lot. He was really the Prince Daemon to the King Viserys type role, and I think this was a gesture to try and bring the two together to stop any type of infighting happening. And it was, to your credit, Jesse, to have Maegor become Hand of the King. The two ruled together pretty well for 2 years. I don't think that means that Maegor was the heir. I just think Aenys would have specifically said something. If Maegor was supposed to be the heir, then that's what would have happened. Hi, FaZe Diamond. How are you? Robert's Rebellion would be an incredible show. I just imagining the scene where Jaime... Yeah. So, Ander, I think that's another thing when we look at the long standing of this Game of Thrones cinematic universe type idea that they're going for. If George was to finish the series, or if unfortunately George was to pass in, say, 10, 15 years, whenever, that's something that I think HBO could explore and it would have a huge market for. People hate on Maegor, and I understood to a degree, but Annie's almost ruined the Just Start Dynasty in a few... Yeah, exactly. This is my thing, right? I am exactly with you, Violet, or I was one of those people that didn't really like Maegor. I thought he was not a great king. I didn't think he was a good person, and to a degree, some of those things like are still kind of true, but they're not fully true. There's a lot of context that I didn't pick up on. And Aenys, I gave him a bit more credit than I should have. In my opinion, Aenys is probably a bottom 3 king of the Targaryens. Like he, maybe not bottom. It's tough because I'd throw Aegon the Fourth down there, the Mad King down there, and then it'd be like him, maybe Viserys. Those would be like my bottom 4 in my opinion. That's true, Jesse, but I do think the Maesters would have liked Aenys a bit more than a lot of the other kings, but that's true. Just realized Rhaenyra was actually Aenys with tits, but not Maegor with... So, I agree to disagree. I think Rhaenyra has a lot of both of them in her, right? When it comes to inaction, she has a lot of Aenys in her. But when it comes to being kind of cruel, she does have a bit of Maegor in her as well. Like, she dealt with her enemies when she had the chance very brutally at times. So I kind of, I get what you're saying, Mystery, but I would say she's a bit of both. I think Maegor kind of crossed the line, but it was definitely a tough situation. Yeah, I agree. See, Maegor killing Aegon is where we go to a different idea, because that's when he does step over the line, I think, a little bit, but I don't think Maegor becoming king was a bad idea. No sound. I got audio. Are we good here, guys? Let me know if we have audio. Let me know. Daron Falseborn, worst king? Maybe. Green tea, yes, Andrew. We have the green tea back once again. Yeah, so I meant Targaryen kings. I didn't include Joffrey in that. Because I'd also maybe put Robert down there too, but he wouldn't be that low. He'd be kind of like a Viserys, I don't know, level. We need a Targaryen king tier list, bro. So Mystery, I actually have done one. I did a live stream of one. I don't know if I've made a video of one, and even if I did, it's probably really outdated. But if you did want to watch Mystery, I have a stream of doing that exact idea. Fair enough, Violet. Sounds back up for a moment. Okay. Sounds good. Maybe Holly, that could be true. I'm not sure on that actually. Robert's reign, yeah. So that's the thing with Robert's reign that's difficult. Is like Robert is kind of similar to Viserys, where their reigns were pretty peaceful for the most part. You had like your stepstones, you had your Greyjoy rebellion in there, but they were pretty peaceful. It's just what comes after, and that kind of affects how we judge Viserys and Robert. And also, Robert did things like while he was king that weren't great. So you know, all right. So moving on. Now at this point, right, we have this Maester that he speaks out against this. It is Gawain. Is that Maester, Grand Maester Gawain? I hope that's how I say his name. He wasn't a big fan of Maegor becoming king, and he protested it. He said this went all against all laws of inheritance, and Maegor killed him. Maybe a bit brutal. I mean, people disagreeing with you and they die. That's some of the not so good of Maegor, right? Someone disagrees with him and he just kills him. I don't know. The only good thing that ever happened to House Targaryen was Robert Baratheon. Oh God, really not sure. Are you not sure about that statement? Now that I think about it, Maegor wasn't cruel because he liked to hurt people, but because he was too pragmatic. Like Tywin, he doesn't like killing, but he knows he has to wage war. I agree to disagree. I mean, I think Maegor kills a lot of people that don't need to be killed. Robert giving Storm's End to Renly instead of Stannis makes him instantly F tier. I agree to disagree once again. I think there was a lot of motivations behind that. That made sense from Robert's point of view, but that they just didn't communicate well. But with that being said, Maegor then he left for King's Landing again, because this is the big idea that we see with King's Landing. Whoever has King's Landing and the actual throne, they're sitting on the throne, they get way more legitimacy than someone saying that they should be king, but they're not on the throne. Because now it's like, okay, well, I'm on the throne, I've taken it by conquest, whatever, and now you're trying to do a rebellion. And that's an interesting thing you can play on, where it's like, you're now trying to usurp my throne because I'm already on the throne. That's something that kind of is going to get played on a bit. Now, again, I want you guys to remember at this point, Maegor is not hated. A lot of people in Westeros will probably be thinking about Maegor, before he was exiled, thinking about, oh, he helped settle down a rebellion. He did some good things. He was this more like a character like Aegon the Conqueror. And Aenys was the opposite of that. People hate Aenys, so they're going to want the other opposite extreme. So Maegor, to start the war, was probably well liked. Maybe not like, Jaehaerys level, but he was more or less liked in my opinion. Now, the Faith at this point had seized the Sept of Remembrance on Rhaenys Hill, and Maegor flew to the city on Balerion and planted his banner on Visenya's Hill. Makes sense, it's his mother's hill, and he begins to rally men. Visenya, basically, she just goes around challenging any who oppose her son. And at this point, Sir Daemon Morrigan, the Grand Captain of the Warrior Sons, comes forth because he's not so happy with Maegor becoming king. And Maegor decides to settle this with swords. Again, we see this idea constantly that Maegor and characters like that, like Daemon, will settle things with the sword. They don't want to settle with words. They don't want to settle with treaties or compromises. Let's let the best swordman win. And this is also going to go into something that I talked a ton about with characters like Daemon and like Maegor, where they're rewarded for violence. Because as violence happens, Maegor ends up winning, and it's a trial of 7. He's deathly injured, but he does win, and that kind of cements him as king at this point. Maegor killed Aegon the Uncrowned's younger brother for basically no reason. Yeah, agree, Jesse. It was more like, oh, well, it was a threat, more or less. Yes, or yeah, but did Maegor enjoy killing those people, or did he think it was necessary? I guess we'll never know because we're going through other people's accounts of it, but I don't know. I don't think, I guess in his head he could have thought they were necessary, but I don't know. Imagine Maegor wasn't sterile and started the first side branch of exiled Targaryens like the Blackfires. House Maegor showing up during the dance to reclaim his set. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Like, what if Maegor was able to have children? Because that would have saved him a lot of issues, in my opinion. That could have really helped him out, and it would have cemented his line over the Jaehaerys line much more. Hi, Abel, how are you? Or I guess I should say the Aenys line. They probably liked that they had a seemingly strong king now. They just wanted, yeah, exactly, Ultra. They wanted something different, a shakeup, something that was the complete opposite. Do you think his lover's magic made him mad? I don't think so. But it's a very likely possibility. Maybe not likely, but it's a possibility. Tywin is a psychopath. I agree. Maybe Maegor was a fire white, became obsessed. Could be. So we then see Maegor is kind of out of action for a little while. I think it was like a month or so. Maybe it was like 3 weeks to a month, where he's kind of injured and all of that. But he meets someone that is very interesting. Tiana of the Tower. Tiana takes over Maegor's care, and on the, I believe it's the 30th day, the king wakes. So again, about a month, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in there, in that reign, and that gets into really his main reign. Visenya is a badass, but I wouldn't want to get involved with that crazy lady. Does anyone else have the feeling that Maegor and Visenya were a little too... Okay, Matthew, now we're really going places. I don't think so, Matthew, but whatever you say. How do you think Alice's second wife got into his hands? Personally, Holly, I'm not sure. That's a great question. It could have been more or less that, again, Maegor was this person that was a great fighter. He would be like your stereo... This is a great comparison as to real life. King Maegor would basically be a LeBron James for any American people, or Tom Brady. He's like the best like athlete at the time. Everyone's fawning over him. And then you also put into, okay, he also is the brother of the king, half brother of the king, while having the greatest sword. Like, he can attract people very easily. But I don't know. You know Targaryens and their queen customs. Oh, God. Parent-child incest is too far, even for Targs. I agree. I agree. Seems like Maegor parallels Victarion. I can see that. I can definitely see that. But Maegor comes back up. He comes out of this coma. He awakes. And he's feeling a little spicy, okay? He's been out for too long. He's like, let's make up for it. He goes and he burns the Sept of Remembrance. He kills anyone trying to flee the Inferno. And later that year, Maegor's forces beat the Faith Militant at the Battle of Stone Bridge and at the Great Fork of the Blackwater. So again, we see Maegor wakes up with the violence. You know, when we see Cersei go, I choose violence, she was trying to basically be Maegor. But Maegor backs it up. You know, Cersei, she had a little wildfire experiment. Maegor just killed everyone. Of the Faith, anyway. He killed them all. He quite literally burned them all, and any that tried to escape got shot. So, a little dark. But again, I think it's understandable from Maegor's point of view. The Faith has been against him for years now at this point. They weren't going to leave him alone, and this shows that Maegor isn't playing around. You don't back off, well, maybe Old Town gets burnt to a crisp. I don't know. Maegor was also stupid sexy if you see the artwork. Oh boy. Oh boy. Maegor would have hated Baelor. I think Maegor would have had Baelor killed. Not just the men, but the women and the children too. I slaughtered them. Yeah, exactly. He should have just burned down Old Town. There you go. I think that is a great point. But Maegor, then after these victories, intends to take another wife, Tiana of the Tower. He now has 3 wives, if you guys are keeping account. And oh, guess what? Another maester. Maegor, don't do it. You can't do that. And that your one true wife awaits you in hide. Well, whatever. And Maegor gets bored, slices his head off, and we are now down 2 Grand Maesters. And Maegor weds who he pleases on the Hill of Rhaenys. And guess what? He does it to even mock the faith. He does it surrounded by the remains of the warrior sons who had died there. How poetic. Maegor is just like sitting here. He's like, I just made a massive blood sacrifice. Might as well just have a marriage on top of their bones. Why not? Maegor is a Giga Chad, yeah. Was this guy in Fire and Blood? If only you read a song about some fire. I don't mind spoilers though. If it is, just okay. So Abel, Maegor the Cruel is the 3rd king. He is in Fire and Blood. He's very early on. He's the 3rd king. So there's Aegon or Aegon. What? I don't even. I just combined Aegon and Maegor. So there's Aegon, and then Aenys is the 2nd king, and then we're on the 3rd king, Maegor. He is most known for building kind of like the Red Keep. He did a lot of can't speak. He did a lot of brutally killing people. And he also is known for basically building up the tunnels or the passages within the Red Keep. He then murdered all the builders. That's kind of Maegor's major accomplishments. He disarms the faith of the warrior sons that Cersei then allows to happen. So in, book 4, when she's arming the faith, that is what Maegor stopped. Aegar Targaryen. Yes, Jesse, yes. Maybe that's my name if I was in this land. Maybe I would be Aegar. But at this point, hold on. Where am I? I kind of lost where I am. But again, at this point, the Faith again are not too happy with Maegor. Oh, I can't speak. Maegor and his actions. Right? He now had 3 wives. He had his first wife was still in Old Town, and he wasn't too happy about this either. And like I talked about, construction of the Red Keep then takes place, and this would continue under Maegor's reign. And the new Hand of the King at this point would also become Lucas Harroway, the father of his 2nd wife. I am losing it, Violet. I can't speak. I've done so much speaking today. I did like 2 hours worth of recording, I feel like. And then I did my chapter analysis notes, and I gotta record that like after this at some point tonight. I'm struggling, okay? I'm really struggling today. No problem, Abel. Maegor would have found Cersei annoying and take her tongue out. Maybe. You're losing. Yes, I am losing it. I'm sure that's. Are you sure that's green tea? I don't know. I'm just okay. Wait, hold on. I don't. Nobody's pointed this out. I don't feel like besides Matthew at some point. But I drink green tea on every single stream, and yet I'm a black supporter. I'm just saying. Sierra, Balon, and Aemon would be his favorite niece and nephews. Yeah, I could definitely see that. That's very fitting. But yeah, so a lot kind of happens here. We see the fortification of the castle. We have Maegor's holdfast. A lot of things starts to happen. You know, he has dungeons are constructed. Basically, Maegor does a lot of remodeling. And we're told that the 4th level is built specifically for torment. Little dark. We don't know if that's completely true and if that really was happening a lot during Maegor's reign, but it does pop up here. Black tea team? No, that's nasty. Wrath toys? Yeah, that's just not it. That's not it. That's all I gotta say. But he now, at this point, places bounties on the heads of those faithful and who remained defiant. A gold dragon was given for the scalp of a warrior's son, and a silver stag for the scalp of a poor fellow. Again, a lot of extreme measures, but it makes sense. How do you stop this issue that's been bothering you the whole time? You start to pay people to not like these people and to scalp them, to bring them in. So, yeah. But at this time, Maegor then also goes to Old Town, and the Faith doesn't do shit. Like, they don't do anything. And Maegor kind of comes back together with his first wife, Cersei Hightower. They celebrated their reunion with a great feast and had a second consummation. From this point forward, the first wife of Maegor would now live in King's Landing. So a very interesting 3 different wife system going on with Maegor at the time. How'd they know whose scalp it was from? We don't know. We don't know. There was just a lot of scalpings going on. Maegor and Daemon are the best friends that would scare the 7 realms. Yes. But at this point now, Prince Aegon, who again is the son of Aenys, he ain't so hot, right? He's not so happy with Maegor taking his throne, and he announces his claim to the Iron Throne. Now, I want to point this out. Why the hell would you back Aegon at this point of the war? Like, the Westerlands and the Riverlands, they have an army of about 15,000 men. Why would you back him? I guess it would be because they would grow in power off doing this, but you have to realize Maegor and Visenya have much bigger fucking dragons than you do. Were you not paying attention? Did we not do our history when Aegon was attacking? And again, all the other houses were kind of like sitting waiting. Like the Baratheons, the Aarons, the Starks, the Lannisters. They were all kind of considering joining Aegon's cause if he could prove it, that he could win. Again, we see this all the time. If you look at any point of history where you have the underdog, what they need is they need a victory. That's how they are able to gain more support, showing that they can win the war. At this point, it looks like a very low percentage chance. And Maegor seizing this opportunity. This is exactly what the Targaryens, by the way, should have done when Robert did his rebellion. Because Maegor sets forth from Old Town. He orders his loyal lord to swarm Aegon's host from all sides. Right? Just attack. Don't let them keep grouping up and gaining more support. Attack him. And that's what happens. Maegor, at the battle beneath the God's Eye, the forces clashed, and the rebellion came to a very swift end when Maegor slew him and his dragon, Quicksilver. Who Quicksilver at this point was not very big. It was not a very menacing dragon. And then you have Balerion on the other side. It was a quick battle, let's put it that way. And at this point, Maegor is known as Maegor the Cruel. Now, what was Maegor really supposed to do in this situation? He had been made himself king. He was the one, like, think about what Aegon's been doing this whole time. Aegon has not been helping. He has not been this person that has been fixing the problems with the faith, ruling. Aegon has been doing nothing. He has been held captive. He finally gets out, and now he tries to fight Maegor. What is Maegor going to do? Let him build up and take support, and then eventually it's going to be more of an equal battle? Again, I understand why Maegor is named the Cruel and why this is a bad action, but what was Maegor really supposed to do? Like, could they have negotiated a peace? Probably not. Like, Maegor wanted to be king, and Aegon wanted to be king. How do you settle that? You just don't. You really don't. And that's like my first big thing here is like, the Maesters, I think, go a little too hard on Maegor for this action. Aegon is the one that was going to fight Maegor, that literally was launching his army. Now, again, Aegon probably was the rightful king. But I don't know. Aegon couldn't even get Rhaena to help him. His own sister, I agree. I think if their strategy against Maegor was the same as Rhaenyra's, numbers and speed, but obviously didn't go their way. Well, the thing here with Matthew with that is, when you look at the Dance of the Dragons, right? Rhaenyra had way more dragons at her command. So Vhagar being on the greens, it was kind of like, okay, but if we get Aemon into a battle where we have 4 dragons, logically you can hope that you would be able to take down Vhagar. That's not even all their dragons, right? Like, they could have dragons every other place. The Greens, while on the other side of that, had to pick and choose where their dragons were, because they only had a couple. That's kind of the difference there. Whereas Aegon didn't really have that advantage. Maegor would burn House Hightower to extinction, leaving Otto and Alicent the only survivors. Probably. Maegor had Balerion insta-win. Yep. I just want to say Robert should have never won that rebellion. Matthew, I've talked about this so many times, but the Targaryens had more money. They had a better army, especially to start the war. Think about the rebellion. They had to get the Stark force all the way from the north, all the way down south. They were kind of locked in the Vale. They had to go all the way to the Stormlands on the other side, rally that force. Then they had to all meet up in the Riverlands. Like, the Targaryens sat on their hands for a while and did nothing. And I agree, Holly. They should have let the throne go. They did not have a chance at this point. They should have waited until later. They should have waited till maybe Maegor's reign was a little bit more shaky and they had more support, and let their dragons grow and then do that. It just bugs me so much that he won every time the rebellion is... Exactly. Also, Vhagar was old and I assume slower at this point. I mean, at this point, Vhagar was still a very tough, like, dragon to fight. Aerys, yeah, exactly. I agree. With Aerys being cocky. He didn't take Robert as a serious threat. Aegon probably would have named Aegon. Yeah, that's the other thing is like, okay, Maegor doesn't have children to this point. He's had multiple wives. If you're looking at this logically from Aegon's point of view, he very easily could have just waited until Visenya and Maegor die and then taken the throne. Or if he would have been became heir because he was the last one left. Rhaena and Aegon had dragons. That's all they need to feel special. Fair enough. Do you think Aemon is similar to Maegor? Yeah, I think in a lot of ways the two are very similar. Both of them are rewarded constantly for violence, and that is something that makes them go down that path of both of them being violent people. Yeah, I would agree with that, yeah. And that, I think, is where I want to leave this stream. I want to do a second stream, and we get into kind of where Maegor falls away. I kind of wanted to get to this specific point where we see Aegon fall, because the rest of this is going to be kind of downhill after this point for Maegor. But yeah, thank you. I know it's a shorter stream, but thank you guys all for watching the stream. I just wanted to get to kind of this point and then probably next week's stream we'll finish up a Maegor as well. Thank you guys all for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next stream next week.